Good evening, viewers. This is your tutor CPA Charles Kafel, and today we are going to proceed with our series on process costing, and we are going to look at our second last topic or subtopics among the process costing, and here we are going to be looking at how we can treat the work in progress. If we have work in progress, how do we treat that? One of the things we have to understand is that production is a continuous activity, and since it is a continuous activity, we expect that when you are making recordings for a certain accounting period or for a given year, financial year, you may find that we are getting that information when the process is still going on. What happens is that if you've commenced the production and by the time the accounting period ends, you find that the production is still ongoing. What happens is that some of the units that we've put in as the inputs, you may find that not all of them have gone through to the final process or to the final stage where we get the finished items. We may find that some of the inputs, they are still in the system or they are still in different stages of completion. So what we want to know from here is that we have to understand that there is work in progress. Those are the unfinished raw materials or the unfinished goods within the process or the production process, but they are at a different level of completion. You may find, we can take an example that at the end of the financial year, you may find that if let's say you are basing on a brewing company, you may find that some of, let's say the bottles, they are at the stage where they are filled with beers, and some are at a process where they are about to get filled with the beers. And you may find that others are at a stage where they are supposed to be putting the covers or where they put the brands and other things. So when it happens like that, we expect that we need to compute what will be the cost of those items that are in the production process, but at a different level of production. What happens is that those units, they are the ones that we call the equivalent units. Those equivalent units, they come as a result of finding how much will it be within the cost of the work in progress, and how much will it be if you try to make sure we convert each item at a different element of cost and at a different level of completion. We try to look at how will it be if it is in terms of the completed units. What happens is that when you are looking for the equivalent production or the equivalent units, those ones, they are just notional units. Notional means the figures, they're not even there, but we try to express the work in progress in terms of the completed units. What happens is if, let's say, you have a half cup of water and you have another half of water in a different cup. When you try to combine them up, you find that you are going to be getting one full cup that is complete or that is full. It is the same way we are trying to look for these units, and we try to find that, as in the example I've just used, you've seen that we are getting one cup of water that is full out of combining the half and the other half. That's exactly the same way we go through when you are looking for the equivalent units. And that equivalent units has different stages, as we are going to be seeing how we really reach on that. And we have the formula we are computing. But there is something you need to add on top of the units themselves being incomplete in terms of the raw materials, or at a different level of completion in terms of raw materials. There are also other elements of cost like labor, because you may find that if, let's say, a bottle which is already filled with, let's say, beer or soda, it will not be having the same cost like that one which is still at the process where they just fill in the sodas or the beers. So we need also to look at each item or each element of cost differently in terms of its completion, because you may find that different workers work in different processes and we incur different amounts or different costs in regards to the employees who are working in different departments. What happens is that when you are looking at this the equivalent units, we need to look at the possible costs that can be actually in those items that are at a certain level of completion. If, let's say, it is 60% labor is complete. If, let's say, we've had material and material is at, let's say, 50% complete, and you find that in labor maybe, let's say, 45% or 60%, whatever percentage that it is, then the other overheads and others, they also may be at a different level, because at different stages we are incurring different costs. So that's all we are going to be looking at, and we find how are we going to be relating these work in progresses. We try to look at how much that will be in terms, if at all we express that into the completed units, and we try to look at the cost of those costs of incomplete units. We can go through the notes, but that's the whole picture, that when you are looking at the equivalent production or the work in progress, that's what we mean. They're saying, since production is a continuous activity, there may be incomplete production at the end of an accounting period. We said when you are counting, let's say, when you are doing production, we do it at a specific period of time that we specify that we are going to be handling production from this and this, depending on how orders, how the organization is organized. And we are saying incomplete units mean those units on which percentage of completion with regards to all elements of cost. Now, in these elements of cost, we are meaning material, labor, and overheads. Those are the main ones we are looking at, and we see how are they completed, or at which level of completion are they in regards to the work in progress. But here we are saying that these incomplete units, those elements of cost, they are not at 100% complete. We have the units that are completed, but we have those ones that are not completed. When they are not completed, we are saying that the cost or the percentage of completion of those work in progress is different depending on the elements of cost. And we are saying such incomplete production units are known as the work in progress and are valued in terms of the equivalent or effective production units. This is what I was trying to explain, that we are trying to look at those work in progress or unfinished production, and we try to convert it into what will it be if at all it had been finished. What will be the number of units that are going to come out. So what happens is that when you're looking at this equivalent production, when they are setting the question, they give you the percentage of each element, and they will give you the work in progress that in terms of units, and they give you the percentage of completion at different level, at different element of cost. So we are saying that equivalent units represent the production of a process in terms of complete units. That's what we are trying to look at. When we get that units after converting the incomplete unit in terms of the completed units, then we get the equivalent units or equivalent production. And we are saying equivalent units means a notional quantity of completed units. It's a notional quantity of completed units substituted for an actual quantity of incomplete physical units in progress. And we are saying that when the aggregate work content of the incomplete units is deemed to be equivalent to that of the substituted quantity, and this applies when the operational costs are apportioned between work in progress and the completed units. What we are saying about these operational costs, we apportion them in their percentage of completion. We take what went to completed units as in 100%, because all of them, they are complete. But these ones, we get their percentage in terms of the elements of costs. How did they consume the elements, those different elements of cost? And we try to look at how many units that could have gone through if at all the production was complete. That's all we are looking at. So we can proceed to the next slide, and we try to look at how we can try to calculate the equivalent units, and we have the procedures or the steps we follow when we are computing the equivalent units. And one of them, we are saying, find out the equivalent production after taking into account of the process losses. Make sure you understand the process losses, and if you don't, make sure you go back to the first videos I posted. We looked at how we calculate for the normal losses, abnormal losses, and abnormal gains, so that you get to know that. But here they are saying, find out equivalent production after taking into account of the process losses, degree of completion of opening or closing work in progress, sorry, closing stock, through preparing the statement of equivalent production. So the first statement we have to prepare is a statement of equivalent production. But how do we get the statement of equivalent production? We have to first take into account the process losses, like the way we've been treating, because it is the same treatment throughout the production process. And we look at how the completion, the degree of completion of the opening and the closing work in progress. We shall look at how we handle if they are opening work in progress and if they are closing work in progress when we are using FIFO weighted average costing method and the LIFO, that is last in, first out. And the other one, FIFO, it is first in, first out. Maybe to give you just a brief idea so that you get a picture. What happens with the FIFO if they are opening work in progress? What we do if they are opening work in progress, we first make an assumption that what came in first should be completed first. So what happens is that we specifically look at how the opening work in progress is completed in terms of the degree or the percentage of completion that will be given the question. And we first finish that. Then what happens next is that we get these other units that we've introduced and we work on them separately. We don't mix these opening work in progress and the introduced units or the input that has been introduced in the system. And what happens is that is very crucial is, one, when they are opening work in progress, it means those things they were already in the system. When we are introducing in the new input, it means those work in progress, for them, they don't need raw materials, meaning that the percentage of consumption of the raw materials will be at 0% because they are already in the system. So they are just remaining something small to get out of the production. That's what is important, but the rest are treated like the same way we are going to be seeing how we treat others, because for the weighted average costing method, for it doesn't differentiate the opening and the introduced units. For it suggests that what was introduced in the system and what was already there as in terms of the opening work in progress, they are all treated at once. There is no making differences. So you just do like the normal way. But what is a bit different is the FIFO, because for the FIFO, we have to first consume the opening stock, and when it is done, then we get to the introduced units and the closing work in progress, as we shall see. Okay, we are saying that to get the equivalent units of work in progress, we are taking, it is equaling to the actual number of units in progress. If let's say the work in progress is 2,000 units, you get the 2,000 units, you multiply by the percentage of work completed for each, or separate for each element of cost. Why are we computing these elements of cost separately? Is because those work in progress units, they consume elements of cost at different rates. You may find that in a certain process we incur less costs than the other processes. That's why we are computing using every element of cost, because they are consumed at a different rate. The second step is to find out the net processing cost. What do they mean by the net process cost? Because we said in the first stage that we have to first take into account the process losses. Within the process losses, we have the normal loss, and you know that the normal loss is deducted from the input so that we can be able to get our expected output. So from there, we have to first find out the net process cost according to element of cost, and they are in terms of the material, labor, and the production overheads. The third one is ascertain cost per unit. We ascertain cost per unit. Cost per unit of equivalent production of each element of cost separately. It means we are computing these equivalent units in terms of the elements of cost, but we are treating them separately because we said they are consumed at different levels, and we divide each element of cost by the respective equivalent units. What that means is that in each column, if let's say it is labor, we are going to be having different equivalent units, or the notional completed units. And if you are going to be having different items, it means we are going to be having different cost per unit for each element of cost. That's what we mean. So the other one is to evaluate the cost of output. Why are we evaluating the cost of output? Because we want to know what is the cost we've incurred in the completed units, the ones that actually went through, because they can give you the production process and they say that we are putting in 10,000 units, but out of the 10,000 units, they may split it and they say that 5,000 went through as completed units, and they may go ahead and say let's say the 3,000 was closing work in progress. It did not go through all of it, but it went through at different stages of completion in respect to each element of cost, and they give you the percentages. Then they may say that the rest was losses. We are just losses, and we try to compute to get the total cost of the process. That's what we mean by that. And we are saying when you have evaluated the cost of the output of the finished, then we have also to know the one for the work in progress, because we are evaluating the cost of output of finished, and also have to look at the cost of the closing work in progress, if any. Hope you can be able to get that. And we're saying we have an NB that the total cost per unit of equivalent units will be equal to the total cost divided by equivalent units. You can call them equivalent units or effective units, and cost of work in progress will be equal to the equivalent units in the work in progress multiplied by the cost per unit of effective production. Those one we are looking at we are looking at how we get the cost per unit. How do we get the cost per unit? We get the total cost we've incurred in the whole process. We divide by effective production. And this effective production is the same as the equivalent production. But this equivalent production has a component of the units that really went through the production process as completed units or output, plus the effective units in the closing work in progress. Remember here we are saying that even that closing work in progress you are seeing, it is still in the system, but it's completed to a certain, it's not in its raw form, or it's not at the same stage as when they put it in the system. It's at a different stage of completion. That's why we are looking at what will be the effective units, what will be the completed units if you try to express the number of units that are within the closing work in progress. I know you guys may be a bit confused, but when we do the computations, you will just see everything flowing. But make sure you be able to remember these steps, because if you get one wrong, you just know everything is going to be wrong. Why? Because what we use at the beginning, you are seeing from step one, we've been using equivalent production. So if you get the equivalent production wrong, then you just know that even these ones, the whole of these ones are going to be wrong, because you can't get this one wrong and you expect that you are going to get the cost per unit, because the cost per unit we are dividing by the total costs over the equivalent production. And if you get it wrong, you just get everything totally wrong. So make sure you try to understand, and if you see things are not coming, make sure you watch this video more and more, and you try to be able to analyze each and everything that I've discussed with you. Hope it can be able to help you out, and we see how we can sort ourselves. The next one we are going to be looking at in the next video is going to be how we treat the opening and closing work in progress with the process losses. I'm not going to go into that, but at least I gave you a hint on how those are treated. But let's first try and understand and try to analyze these so that we'll be able to understand where we are going before we reach to more and more complicated numbers as we are going to be seeing them. But I can assure you that if you keep following and rewatch these videos, you are going to be able to understand each and everything, and you'll be able to master the things. Because the reason as why I'm heading very slowly is because this is what they examine at this level. It is very rare to find what we started with as being set in terms of computations. What they normally set from there, maybe they may give you theories, but this is what they really set within, because they know it's a bit confusing. But I'm going to make sure that I simplify this, and it will be an easy topic that you can get all the marks, because getting all the marks is very fine, because everything just flowing, what you have got up is the one that takes you to the next step. Thank you for watching, and I hope you can be able to subscribe so that we learn more and more as we keep learning. Thank you.